can I ask the panel to comment on what your vision of the application of blockchain is to the music industry? Who would like to go first? Imogen?
Ladies first. Yeah, so when I had this long, over the last 20 years, kind of eventually ending up on this idea called mycelia. And originally I thought, oh, maybe I need to create a platform, or maybe I need to, I need to do this, this, and this. But actually, what I realised, and it just accentuates when I come to a panel like this, is that essentially everyone is kind of talking about the same thing, but they have a different way of putting it into a box, what that is. And so the more I realise that, the less I think, okay, it's not about me trying to do anything specifically. It's about trying to get us all to connect those dots, try to lose the ownership problem, so that we do create an open global music database, which I feel the whole industry needs more than anything. There's nothing more important than that. Nothing more important than getting that verified official information up in a global music database that all services can access, that all services can, if they need any information, they have no excuse whatsoever to not pay somebody, because it's all there in this database. So the blockchain is, is where to house that, where to keep that information. There are concerns about the fact that it's indelible and that you can't change anything in the past, but this might be a problem, but there's plenty of people out there who want to figure that out. So perhaps it could do, we could look at connecting a global music database with a kind of time machine effect, so that when something gets added onto the blockchain, a little hash, little linked data, stamps obviously time, and then it accesses maybe in tandem with a decentralized database, a centralized database, which is always keeping a track of the latest developments on that one particular song. And I feel like we're all talking about individual rights and artists and everything, but really what we're talking about is the song, is the recording. And in that recording, I might be the songwriter, but there may be somebody else who's played the cello, and there might be somebody who's managing, or getting a piece of my bit of it. And equally, there might be a producer who gets a cut, and the publisher gets a cut, and all these people get a cut. But it's all there in this, connected to this song, the metadata of the song, and that being able to have that on one place that people can all agree to interact with, that people can pull their data, the PRS, the PPL, all those people who have that database, those databases, to pull together and collectively, along with crowdsourcing information, perhaps even from, I'm very excited about this app called Streamline. This is what I feel like mycelia could be, is this is a place to connect those missing dots for the marketplaces that might spring up from something like that global music database. So what I'm getting excited about is called Streamliner. And Streamliner, what Streamliner does is it visualizes physical artwork in 3D, online. So any of you out there who have CDs, physical CDs, in your CD is very important information that could help this global music database grow from the ground up by having official lyrics. It's got some of the musicians' information. Maybe it's not totally verified, because some record labels might slightly skew things or whatever, some people won't recognise, but it's a really good start, because a lot of people have verified that that's good enough to go out there into the world and people interact with that. So this app can scrape that information, could populate a database by taking the text from the visual data, realising that that's text, embedding it into a blockchain, into a database, and then the database could be linked to individual, websites with your own domain name, say imogenheap.music. So when something was put up there that it belonged to me, that it was related to me, I could go in and check that and verify that myself, alongside with all the other people involved in that piece of music. So I'm really excited about how not just the organisations can pull together and put in their databases together, and together we figure out how to verify that information, but also how we can get hundreds of thousands of people who have amazing record collections, how to pull that information up and get that up there too. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Benji, is that
yeah,
a similar vision?
So yeah, remarkably similar. there are currently 3,000 people running nodes of the Bitcoin blockchain. And this has been processing and running transactions for 7 years. Every 10 minutes a new one is broadcast. And I would like, my vision is that somewhere in this building is a computer running a node of that system. And at ASCAP and BMI and CSAC and SASEM and every publisher and every record label and every artist and every studio similarly running the system so that they have the most up-to-date information available to them. And that when an artist is in the studio, if I was lucky enough to be in the studio with Imogen, instead of saying, send me an MP3 of what we just did, she would have to enter in a basic amount of information. She would send me this file format, a container, which would have the music, persistent information on how to contact and pay her as one of the creators. And I can see that basically in the file as it references to a blockchain transaction. And at the second that happens, it's also in here. And it's also all the places around the world. Therefore, if we ever had a dispute about it, we could fix it one place, one time, not one place, and then have to figure out how to get it to 150 other people, make sure that they've verified it, and make sure that we're getting paid backwards. So I think that there's a day zero problem, which is that today, all the information is going everywhere, and it is never tied to the actual song. The actual underlying recording can be altered, and until we say we get YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, etc. to say, we would like to be compliant in this. We would like this because this creates an efficiency for us. We then know who to pay and how to pay them. And so until, I think that there are multiple solutions available to us, and the Bitcoin blockchain is not the long-term solution. It is the only production-hardened 6-year-old system. It's been beaten up, it needs more nodes running, it's got a whole bunch of problems, but it's still pretty remarkably robust, and it's got 3 times the computing power of Google running on it today from just that nodes. So if we're all operating from the same database, that already exists, it's not a brand new one, it's already there, we can populate with our information, and the system can heal itself through incentivization of fixing your data. There's a lot of incentivization to get the data right, obviously, because you want to pay out £1 billion, and you want to pay out, and we all want to get our writers and artists paid. But there's no one central place to do that or verify it. There could be. It's just a question of, we can't use the traditional MP3s and waves and all these other odd formats because they're not built for it. I think we need to house it in a container zip file type operation. And that when Imogen sends me the song, within it is a manifest which tells me what can and can't be done with it in digital rights expression. And then I can serve an MP3 of that to Spotify, I can serve a WAV file of that to another service, an ACC to Apple. The choice of the service, so it doesn't change anything at the consumer level other than the fact that they would know that in using this song, it's got the information on who to pay and how to contact them, their PRO affiliation, who their publisher is, who performed on the record. And you can imagine the studio, when a session is going down, the guitar player saying, just make sure my information's in the export. So this is at the digital audio workstation when the work is being worked on. And for the back catalog, let's take the best versions that we have and fix them in one place, not in hundreds.
Okay, thank you. So, who would like to go first? All three. No, Alan first. We'll go that way.
I'd just like to present a completely different view of this. Everybody loves mashups, and what I'm concerned about with the music industry is what I like to call Mad Max meets the musical Annie. And basically at Meetum last year, I said that someone today, who's completely unknown to us, living today, is building the next Napster, and we'll see it in the next 2 to 5 years. It's a decentralized streaming solution that also will have downloading. It will be built on some type of blockchain with magnet links, and torrents, and some P2P encryption and other technologies we don't even maybe know yet. It's not going to be licensed because there's no owner, there's no founder, you don't know who made it. It will just be out there and you can't take it down. Won't pay any royalties, and apps will have access to it, and it'll be immune by safe harbor and piracy, and it's inevitable, it's going to happen. But what's not inevitable is our response. And I say this not to be a downer, I say this because when we have these arguments and debates, about transparency and control and whatnot, it's going to be moot unless we do something better. So we have an opportunity to take this technology and other technologies like it and create an alternative view, a better value than true free you've never seen before. And that's something we need to do. And to do that, you have to disrupt the disruptor, and to disrupt the disruptor, we have to get to work. I mean, we have to start doing this. We can't just keep having panels and talking about things. We're gonna have to sit down, and one thing I absolutely agree with Benji on 100%, he keeps putting forward, and I think it's the first thing that really has to happen on that side, is he talks about a minimal viable data set. I mean, you can throw as much data as you want at our system or any other system, and we'll take it and we'll store it. But we need to know this is what something is, because even our technology is only as good as the data that is provided to us. We need to get that started, and that's something we can all pretty much probably agree to, at least a basic set that's critical for me.
Thor?
You asked for a vision, and I'm not going to describe where we are at because you guys have actually done that already. My vision for the future of this is that we are looking at, first of all, internet are changing, and highly probable will be blockchain that will take over the existing technology that we are looking today. To be an integrated part of the new technology instead of building on it later is what we need to do, actually. The second is my vision of the future of the music industry is actually music as a service. We have been talking about blockchain on top of licensing for Spotify, licensing for Apple Music, probably somebody from both those, Spotify and Apple here now. And they don't need to set up their own licensing deals with anybody, actually. They dip into a pool of music that's there for the taking. An example of that is the music in the car industry. That's the second place that you are listening to music besides your home. And by 2022, all of the car music entertainment system are direct. There are no CDs anymore, there are nothing. They will dip into a music as a service and put it together. Not today where you do it via Bluetooth over Spotify, etc. So I think the vision of music industry and the future is music as a service.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what do we want to achieve? And I think a goal we can probably all agree on is plotting a path for growth for the music industry. Leaving aside all of these small kind of, the micro questions on a big level, ultimately we want to, like, what will it be that will make all of us be sharing a bigger pie in the future? And so I think it's interesting to look at industries that have been successful in the internet age. So for example, start the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem, for example, and think about what lessons could we learn if we were going to look over there. And so one thing I would say is one of the big drivers of innovation in that kind of world is the fact that the cost of testing out new ideas has just plummeted. So anybody can try out an idea. No good idea doesn't get tested today. In music, it's very expensive to launch your new idea and test out whether it's a good idea. Music needs to make it as cheap and easy as possible for people to innovate and come up with new offerings to consumers. And a second thing that I find interesting about these companies is the way that they present themselves as platforms. They're quite willing to open up their intellectual property or their technology to third parties for free, because they realize that, first of all, the best ideas are not necessarily restricted to the people who work inside the company. And secondly, that value is created both for them, for selfish reasons, but also for their users, by allowing other people to develop all of these applications and services that they've never dreamt of. So when I think about blockchain and kind of the big vision, ultimate aim of it, it is what I think, is it Andy Weissman came up with this phrase, the API. It's like the music industry API. We have this pool that we dip into, which is like all of this amazing content that everybody loves, everybody wants to use, Let's make it as easy and cheap and frictionless as possible, make it possible for people to do things that we've never dreamt of, and it's not going to, streaming is going to be an old technology in 10 years' time. How can we drive the innovation that will create the next thing, the next most exciting thing, and not just 1 or 2 or 3 of them, but 1,000 of them, 50,000 of them. So music industry API based on blockchain, shared database, all of the technical stuff we described.
And to the point there, sorry, just 2 of you have mentioned this pool of songs. And this is the goal. There's a technology called IPFS. It stands for Interplanetary File System, and it's basically like a Dropbox, but it's a distributed network. So it's thousands of computers, and it has like 2-3 petabytes of information in it already. This is the type of technology I picture that every single time we encode a song out of the digital workstation or from an older file into a new one, it drops in there with its requisite data. Phil's point is exactly correct. That the startup community today, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple need not 1 or 2 competitors, they need tens of thousands of competitors. The true innovation is going to come from a 17-year-old girl or an 18-year-old boy in a dorm room or in college or in school or in a coffee shop. They're going to code the next great app. And I've seen this from venture capitalists, Andy in particular, you just mentioned from Union Square. They won't touch music startups at the moment because they're too risky, because they know that millions are going to have to go over towards the labels just to get licenses, which would take a couple of years anyway. They can't prove product market fit. They're used to failing and failing quickly and learning from that and moving on. So if we don't bind the music to the data and put identifiers in it so that it can be tracked wherever it goes, the scenario you mentioned of the platform of the future, I think is actually just begun, and it started with WhatsApp going end-to-end encryption and Line going end-to-end encryption, which means that I can send anyone in here a song using WhatsApp, and the network carrying it does not know what I'm sending.
No audio or video fingerprinting works in an encrypted network.
Yep.
Period.
So basically what happens is, picture if I create a group on WhatsApp or online and I start sharing and creating a music service within that. Who would know other than those invited into it? Because literally the purpose of end-to-end encryption. So picture mass mesh networks at scale running end-to-end encryption, which is open source technology. Anyone can go in and create end-to-end encryption these days. It's not that hard. So the way that I think that you beat that is you make it so ultra easy to use it in a legitimate system that allows the entirety of the industry to scale. We need girls and boys coding the apps of the future that will compete with Spotify and YouTube, so that we can bring power to the creators in that scenario and make sure that they're, and if we don't start with a pool of the songs in one place that everyone can have at, with a standardized data set, just a real, the ISRC and ISWC are absolutely what we need. But if we try and start there from the studio, how long does it take to get an ISWC onto a song? There's a process of days for that to happen. So I agree we should have it, but ultimately imagine if you just had to enter, this is who I am and how to pay me as the writer, just one of them. This is who I am and how to pay me as the artist. This is the region availability and what the song is called, and you can hit play to verify it as that song. You go upload that into this system, it goes against multiple scan and matches to make sure it's not already there, and it drops it into this repository that everyone has access to. And you set your permissions at the file level, not at the database level and not at the licensing level.
Cool.
Just, you mentioned IPFS, and that has, in our opinion, the potential to be the ultimate digital right management system. Very simple, actually. If it's not in there and in the music as a service pool, it's not licensed. Full stop.
Just don't mention it's based on BitTorrent.
So Spotify, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to keep some time back for the audience to ask questions, but I can see my colleagues want to get a comment in. So I think we'll take yours briefly, please, and then what we'll come on to is, we were hearing, I suppose, a certain amount of frustration around the future is happening, it's going in a certain direction, the industry needs to do things. We've got a couple of people here. The next panel is going to be industry representatives as well, so I think it'd be quite good for us to try and get out from you guys what are the key things in terms of next steps that you would like to see, because we've had quite a lot of components of the future. But just before we go, a quick one, Mark and Keith.
Well, it was just I completely agree with your observation about the extent of innovation for disseminating music. I mean, it's very exciting that there are so many more channels that have evolved over the last 5 years. It was really an observation to say that, unfortunately, the evolution of rights management systems has not accelerated in exactly the same way. And certainly within the collective rights management domain, talking again about the billions of transactions we're receiving, it has been extremely complex and very challenging to try to manage the extent of the processing for that. So I think it's really just a reminder, and Benji, you mentioned it, that the dependency on standards as a foundation of all of this. We can't tear up the rule book, and I was taken 22 years to get to this point with the ISWC standard. It's probably even longer for the ISRC standard. We're finally getting to a point where the whole industry is adopting it. For goodness sake, let's not throw the bathwater away on that one. But let's use that as the foundation and then build layers on that. But I also, it's just a warning also against the growing propensity about the adoption of proprietary technology. Fingerprinting technology, for example, is all proprietary. Every fingerprint is different. So I think we need to be really careful that we're building platforms that allow plugins rather than depending on individual proprietary technologies which may not be here in the future.
Thank you.
So in one sentence, which is just going back to what you said at the start. I just think that I don't think there's any value in people like me saying the music industry are not, there's people at the coalface doing hard work trying to make all this happen. So I think we shouldn't be concentrating on all the stuff that we're frustrated with. We're thinking about what is the big opportunity here. That's where we can all align, the big opportunity, we all get to benefit if we focus on that.
So my vision picks up on a number of aspects of what's been previously said, and that vision is that the musical contributions to a song, the rights ownership in a song get captured when that information is first available and then get tied kind of to the song and persist with the song. Back to some of my earlier points, the existence of a indelible multi-copy ledger technology in and of itself can't possibly solve that problem. It is but a tiny part. It's kind of the fundamental storage layer of solving that problem. And in many ways, when I have to solve this problem every day. Who contributed? Who owns the rights? I maintain a database on that. I've got full audit history of how it's changed. I don't spend very much time worrying about what I store that information in. I spend all my time worrying about how do I resolve the fact that he claims he owns the rights and she claims she owns the rights. And his rights actually expired 5 years ago, and how do I motivate him to come and fix that?
And as far as the blockchain goes, there are multiple flavors of blockchain. Ethereum is more like a virtual engine for running software, and it's Ethereum will be the way in which we run technology in the future. I really do believe that. As far as the blockchain goes, you can tie transactions to one another. So if it goes in at a certain level, so this is the vision is, if it goes in with just one songwriter how to contact and pay, one performer how to contact and pay, if you anchor it there, then your goal is to get to the ISRC, the ISWC, and if possible, the ISNI, ISNI. If you could, so because you are continuously amending forward, you're adding the best data you possibly can, and it's being added everywhere. So if there is a dispute that arises amongst 5 different parties, have the fight in the way that you traditionally would, absolutely have the fight. But when you resolve that argument, you resolve it, and it goes, this was when the song was encoded, these were the original 3 people that contributed to it, and now every amendment moving forward is followed with it. So if you put trackers into it, you can see where that original thing goes.
Can I just interject here? I agree with 85% of everything that Benji generally says, but this thing I do not agree with. It's not the most efficient way to run a database. I've built databases for many years, and I can tell you that probably the best model for this is a hybridized, centralized or decentralized system that uses a combination of blockchain technology and change tracking. So you might think of Wikipedia. So what happens is, when you commit something, which happens in like a system like Git, you have an identifier that says this thing happened. But what happens is when you go to Wikipedia every day, for example, you're looking at the most current data about whatever is known by whoever wrote it. But behind the scenes, people are making edits and changes and debates, and they're changing contracts or doing, I mean, that's the idea, is that you should have a dynamic system that can live and breathe, and everybody can commit via a blockchain technology on the back end and say, yes, I agree with this, yes, I agree with this, and now it is reflected to the world. I think that's a better way of handling it, but, you know, that's something
So I think part of the problem is blockchain to date, its primary use cases have been around transactions, and we keep using this word transactions. The problem is the model we are talking about isn't about transactions, they're about one-sided entries. Transactions normally have a buyer and a seller, a borrower and a lender, a bookmaker and a hunter. We don't have that. We are having people, we're talking about a world where people are making single-sided assertions about whether they contributed to a song or not. And there is no counterparty to verify. And I don't think there's enough dialogue about what do you do in that world where there aren't transactions and natural verification processes. Because you quickly get to a world that says, actually, if there's 30,000 recordings a week and a certain percentage of them have rights conflicts and baseless assertions about musical contributions, that needs people and processes to review, facilitate their resolution. Because guess what? Those people don't come forward naturally to resolve the fact that they don't own the rights. And you quickly get to a model that says, actually, we're talking about, surprise, surprise, what CMOs do today. We need 200 people to manage the maintenance of that data, the allocation of money to those people. And that stuff costs, so that needs paid. You then get commercial interest in the data. So there's not enough thinking about where this actually ends up and the kind of people and process that are necessary to make it work.
Okay, so last
I
time
was going to say, I think that what you're talking about with the Wikipedia model, this is kind of what blockchain does, right? This is the audit trail. This is the whole point of the blockchain. It's like, in block 1, it said Benji was the only writer of this song. In block 2, Benji says, I have now signed the publishing to this version. In block 3, it says, you know, now an artist has come and done a cut, you know, and it's the audit trail. And so this is the whole point of the indelible point.
But
it's
these
not a
things
disadvantage,
are
it's an advantage, but you have to have, so you have a definitive, what we agree is the best version of the
It's also
information
a
on each
family
date,
tree. It's a
and then
family
yes,
tree
you will have to have
model.
other processes that if you want to update that information in their disputes, which will exist outside of the blockchain. But we are saying that as an industry, we have one, you know, this is the one official record, and we're not duplicating the effort all around the world and all of the CMS.
My challenge would be around the word official. Who says it's official? The system doesn't know good data from bad data. It just knows that somebody asserted something.
We agree to work to our best efforts to make it as accurate as possible, and we.
So last one from Thor, and then we'll come around for one last topic.
After all the disputes has been solved, it should go down on the blockchain. Which is, when we started out it and looked into blockchain, the first guy actually I asked to join us was Dick Canapes. He is looking into all of this continuously, and when all the disputes is solved, then it goes into the pool, and then it goes into the blockchain.
But they're never ultimately resolved because that stuff changes on a daily basis. Catalogs
It's
are being
nuanced.
sold,
It's
rights-
nuanced.
Yeah, so it gets updated in the next
So just you know, just to think of it in this way, if you could create a family tree of what happens to that, you have one, right? You have a change log of all the changes that have happened, but no one else can see it. So no one else can corroborate that information. You are the only trusted source of that information. So you are the proven party. So there's no reason that you aren't an encoding point into the blockchain. So you can set the persistence of that data because you would be a trusted part of this network. So the whole purpose is if we don't start from a ground zero of basic truth, we never get there. So how many places do you publish your changelog of information to today so that everyone else has the same data and therefore can pay out appropriately?
It depends which parties you're talking about. So to our members, our rights holder members, our perform members, we show them some of that change log.
But what I'm saying is
we deliver data to other CMOs, we get to see different data.
Because the way I view this is if you're publishing it into a public, distributed place, there are certain things you don't publish. You don't have to publish numbers or how much money is involved. That's you create what they would call nested permissions because you're only giving people the key to see what you want them to see. You know, they can see a transaction, they don't know what it is unless you give them the key to view it. You also create multiple signatures. So you could say, if any PRS member wants to change X, Y, and Z about this file, they have to get a signature from the PRO. So you can create hierarchies of information. It's just a data standard that lives within a public ledger. And the reason for the public side is, I believe, for two reasons. One of which is it's going to keep everybody honest in a place, and it creates trust among people who don't trust each other. The second is that no one can complain about the fact that they're under contact, because in order to get into the system, you have to be contacted. The change log actually happens at the web level, and then once the dispute's raised, goes into the blockchain. So it goes in the beginning, and then it creates a family tree that is accessible to everybody. And the other side is, if you're an artist or you're a bad actor, and you want to work in this industry amongst all these people in this room, and you go up and you publicly perjure yourself in front of that network, they know who you are. Spotify may decide anyone that comes from that source we don't want to touch. And that's their choice on the public side. Think about it, you're about to say, I own, and about to broadcast the entire world that I own this Beyonce song, 100% publishing, 100% performance.
Well, they only have to collect a check and then they're gone. So.
But you also know how to contact and pay them. So, and again, the payment rules are still made by PROs, by publishers, by labels. That's not part of the system. It's a question of recording that information.
If we
Take control of it.
Trying to